Hi everyone, today we are going to talk about Airtable. Now, I've introduced Airtable in a previous video, but today we're going to have a much deeper dive into what it is, how it works, and how you should use it. So, let's get into it. Okay, so let's start taking a look at Airtable and how it works. Now, when you first start up Airtable, you'll see a screen that will allow you to pick the database that you want to start looking at. Now, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to use terminology that you're going to be familiar with. Obviously, Airtable uses its own terminology that can be a little bit confusing. So this is what Airtable calls a base. But essentially the way to think of it is that it is a collection of databases. So these tabs at the top basically all correspond to separate databases within that collection. They can all have dependencies on each other, so you can pull data from certain tabs into other tabs and databases. So what we're looking at now is a dummy template. This is essentially just a real estate listings manager example. So what you see when you come into this view is all of your data sitting in the middle of the screen. On the left-hand side, you see different ways of manipulating that data. So I can go into, say, a gallery view and watch all of my data entries be displayed as little cards like this. I can then move the cards around, do cool stuff like that. I can also go into a Kanban view, which for the project managers of you, this is an incredibly useful tool. As you're moving along the process of, in this case, purchasing a home, you want to be able to say, well, actually, 822 Fennel Road has just had an offer made. Boom, now it goes over there. I can follow the process as it goes along. Now, this is great for working with a team because someone may take a tag, someone may take a record and move it into the next field without you having to be aware of it. So if I go and make an offer now on 565 Elderflower Lane, I can just tag it as that I've made an offer. I don't need to tell you specifically, hey, do you know what? I've just done this. I don't need to take up your time with that because you're working from the same source of data, the same database. You can just look in and check and see, this is now moved into this field. Great, I know that's happening. Another view is the calendar field. It's quite self-explanatory. And then you also have a form view. Now the form view is incredibly useful because it allows people to input data into your database very easily. And you can embed this form on your website. And we'll go into that in a little bit more depth later on when we specialize on non-profits and what that means. So if we go back to the all listings view, you can see that the data has been collected in an interesting way. And this looks a lot more advanced than something like Microsoft Access or even Excel, because you'll notice that you can store attachments like pictures. So there's a lot more depth to what you can store in this database. I can create contact cards for people with all their details and every record, including this cute cat, connected to these people. I can store phone numbers, I can store email addresses, websites, I can create drop downs, similar to what you saw in the Kanban view. So we saw that 565 Elderflower Lane, I turned it to offer made. Well, actually, maybe if I put it back to active and then come back to the Kanban view, you'll see here it is. It's back in the active column. So that just shows you how these are all connected. It's just different ways of viewing that same information. So back to the main view. Now, the final thing to really talk about here is this bar up here. So this bar up here gives you ways of further manipulating that data in terms of what you can and cannot see on screen. So I can further customize each of these views using these fields up here. And I can create another view just like that. So this view has had no further manipulation on it. And as you can see, the data is just listed out. Simple as that. But say I don't want to see, or say that I only want to see active listings. I don't want to see anything that's not active because that's not particularly relevant for what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here, I'm going to rename this view. I'm going to call it active listing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide anything that's not with a status of active. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to filter, add a filter where status is active. Immediately all the fields change. Now I can only see those that are active. Now of course if I go back to all listings, nothing's changed. It's all still there. All I'm doing is manipulating what I can see on screen. So let's look at this a different way. Maybe actually I want to see everything, but there's so many records that this is a bit clunky, it's a bit messy. So what I can do is choose to group the fields by a set column. So same again, let's go to status. You'll see now that they've all been broken up and collected based on their status. So now I can see all of my active ones in one place, all of the offer made in one place. It just makes it a lot neater for me to be able to view. And then of course I've got the option to sort. So I can sort by status from first to last. And I can also hide fields. So when I click on hide fields, I see all of my columns and I can decide that in this view, actually, because I only care about status, I don't care about tag name, I don't care about first listed, I don't actually care about what the property is. All I care about is that it's active and how much we're asking for it. And again, go back to all listings, it's all still there, it hasn't changed. All that's changed is this specific view. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a feel for what you can do with Airtable. And you can see up here, now that we go back to all listings, there are already 2 hidden fields. It's already grouped by status. It's not sorted, but it could be. And there's no filters attached. So now let's take a look at a non-profit website, something that's a little bit more specific to what you're doing. So in your day-to-day work as a non-profit, you may have staff or senior volunteers that you need to rely on to carry out certain tasks that you can't do because you're too busy. So on this base, what we have is a task tab, and what that does is simply allows you to list out certain tasks that need to be completed. So you could say, take out the trash. And that's to do. You could add in a new column with a single select, where you could list the volunteer connected to that. I can create an option. I can say Jerry and Mary. And now I can make a decision. Actually, Jerry's free. Jerry's going to handle that task. I can go through, create more tasks. I can assign them to the volunteers. I can give them any additional notes if need be. Now I could have Jerry have access to this database, and Jerry could come in the morning and could see. So Jerry could come in the morning and see what tasks are waiting for him today. And what I would do is group by volunteer. So now, when other tasks appear to other people, it's very clear. This area is Jerry's area of tasks that he has to complete. Now you can get a lot fancier with this. You can have them create their own Airtable account so they can log in on their own and have a look. And you can use this then to create other things like a Kanban board. So now I can see all of the tasks that are listed as to do. I can see this task. It hasn't been given a category, so I'm going to put this in to do. So now Jerry can start working on his task. And so he can let you know that he's started to work on it by moving into in progress. This tells you that he has seen the task and that he has started to work on it. When he's done, you can put it straight to done. Simple as that. And what you can say is that I don't care about tasks that are done. I don't need to see that anymore. I'm going to set a filter. So I only want to see tasks that are not done. Now, anytime someone completes a task and switches it to done, it disappears. But it doesn't get deleted. I could create a new view, and here it is. They're all there. So I could name this one main. I could name this one to do. And let's make a new one. Why not? Now I can see ones that are done. So what I would do is I'll put a filter on here, add filter where status is done. Now I'll only see ones that are done. Go to my main view, I'll turn this one back to in progress. So on the to do tab, I only see tasks that are in progress. On done, I now see ones that are complete. So this gives you a bit of a feel for how you could manage tasks through Airtable. Let's take a look at volunteers. So on the volunteers tab, we have a collection of everyone who's volunteered to assist with a non-profit. We've created a form that we've allowed for the potential volunteers to sign up with. And that can then be embedded on the website for them to go to the website and sign up and take part. So that form is just connected to all of the data, as we know from this view here. Now in the main view, I have everything, all the data. It can be grouped and sorted however you want, but you just keep everything in the main view. And what I've done here is I've added a couple of other columns that don't appear on the form that allow me to filter out that data. So I've set a filter up here that says, don't show me records where someone has been marked as inactive or rejected. So if someone clicks inactive, they disappear off the list. This is an inactive volunteer who's not responding to requests for communication. They also disappear if I reject them. Maybe they're not suitable to be a volunteer and we can't take them on. So we can click reject and they disappear. Now what I've also done is created separate tabs for the inactive and rejected volunteers. Again, it's just a filter. So here this filter says only show me data where rejected is checked. So now I can very quickly get between inactive, rejected, and my main bank of volunteers. So what you really need to get from the Airtable experience is that the whole point of this is far much more than just organizing yourself. This is about setting yourself up to expand and delegate your tasks to other people who you can trust and rely on. So let's take a look at how some of these dependencies can work together. So for an example, you may host events based on certain things that you do within your nonprofit. You can use this section here on the events page to create an event. You could say, let's call it a charity dinner. You know when the date of the charity dinner is going to be. It's going to be on the 1st of May. And now what that does is, because I've created this dependency on the volunteers tab called volunteering schedule, let's take a look at this field, customize field type, link to events. So you can pick a table to link to. So these are the tables up here: tasks, events, volunteers. I want to link to events. I'm okay with linking to multiple records. Click save, and here it is. Now I see a little cross appear down here. When I click on that cross, I now see my events appear. And so the way that I've set up this main view volunteer tab is that I'm grouping by the volunteering schedule. So what I can do is I can say that Andy has told me that he would be perfect for the Easter basket giveaway. So I assign him to that. When I assign him to that, you see this orange box is appearing around the record telling you that the record is going to move. So when I click out of that record, Andy's moved. Andy's now down here. Well, I need some people to help with the charity dinner. So now I'm going to go through here. And what I'm presuming here is that you've interviewed these people, you're happy with them, you haven't rejected them, they haven't been marked as inactive, so these are all relevant volunteers, and you're now calling them, interviewing them, and assigning them to your events so that you're covered for each of your events. So now I've got a decent amount of volunteers on each of my events. The big days come, we've had our event, and now charity dinner is no longer relevant. Well, simple. I can just remove it. Delete, delete, delete. Charity dinner is now no longer a thing. I could go back to the events tab, create the next event, and start assigning people to that event. Or more importantly, you could have your volunteers, some senior volunteers, obviously, because this is potentially sensitive information, do this for you, giving you the ability to just check in as and when. So that's kind of the power behind what you can do with Airtable. And as I said earlier, you can create a field, I'll call it single select, where I list out my volunteers, my senior volunteers. Here's Dave and Lisa. I'm gonna make them slightly different colors. Okay. So now, as the CEO, as the person in charge, you can go through this list of people who've signed up to volunteer, and you can start assigning it to your senior volunteers. So you can say, well, Lisa, you're going to be in charge of these ones. Dave, you're going to be in charge of contacting these ones. Done. Now, Dave and Lisa can come and see what's assigned to them. So when Dave's working on Monday, he sees the ones he's got to call. And when Lisa's in on Tuesday, she knows the ones that she needs to call. And she can inactive, reject them. Maybe that's not enough. Maybe you want to have a second level interview. So we could have now past first stage interview. And we'll make it as simple as yes or no. Now at the minute, there's no validation on this field. So nothing happens when people check them. Maybe that's actually perfect. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe you don't want anything to disappear, because this tells you that the volunteer has made contact. So if we know these are passed, the assumption is if they don't pass the first stage interview, they're going to be marked as rejected. So any that aren't ticked are now waiting to be contacted. So this helps Lisa keep track of the ones that she's calling. It helps Dave keep track of the ones he's calling, but it also tells you as one of the owners, what have they done? What have they got up to? Okay, great. This is where we are. So now what you may want to do is have a second stage interview with these volunteers. So in this situation, you'll see that this has been marked as ticked. So Daria is ready for her second stage interview. Now maybe Lisa arranged for that interview, maybe she didn't, maybe you're just going to call them when you're ready. Well, you've got the phone number, you give them a call, you have a quick chat to make sure that you're happy with them, and you're over the moon. They sound like a great volunteer. So now maybe you need to put another flag in. And again, it can just be a yes or no. Approved. You've approved Daria. You spoke to her and you said, yep, she's great, she'll do. So now you've marked approved. So now what you could explain with Lisa is the process is that now this comes back to Lisa. Now Lisa sees this has been approved. She can now get in touch with Daria to book her in to volunteer for the first time or be inducted. There is actually a little column here for that. So maybe she's coming on the 17th and she's going to come in at 11 a.m. Now we know. Now we know when she's coming in and it's on the calendar. So now the calendar can show us when the volunteers are coming in. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a feel for what you can do. This really is process driven. So you really start to think about, how does this work for you? How does this need to work? What can you achieve? What can't you achieve? And that's just looking at volunteers. So let's just recap this. So we've now got the website as the point of capture where people can volunteer. We've now developed a process where we've got some senior volunteers who have access to Airtable, who can now be trained on using Airtable and the process that you want to implement. And then you can have them run it, putting you in a position to just check and be overseeing what's going on and what's happening, allowing you to focus on much more important activities going forward, like building the nonprofit and fundraising. So that does it, I think, for the introduction. You've got the same kind of feature of donations. You've got the form on the website where people can make a donation. They can decide that they're going to drop off food. They can pick the time that they're going to do it. You've then got your check boxes for maybe Lisa or Dave that they can check, yep, I've collected it, I've got the money. And Lisa and Dave at the same time ask them, do you need a tax receipt? Answer was yes. Okay, great. Now I know that. Now I need to know exactly what was donated. 2 bags of clothes. Okay. What we also need to know is the address of that person. So now that could be added to the form. So what we'll do here is we'll create a column and we'll call it address. We'll make it long text because there's multiple lines of text to it. And we could set a separate field for city, town, zip code, whatever, but let's just call it address for now. I can then go to the form. Address has now appeared in the fields. I can pick where I want the address to go. So I'm going to put it to appear after name, but I'm also aware that putting an address field could put people off of donating because they're going to think, well, why am I having to give my address out? So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make this a conditional field. It's only going to appear when certain fields have been filled in. So I want to know, see, I need to put this one in. Do you need a tax receipt? So show when do you need a tax receipt is yes. And I can put some text here. This is for the tax receipt. I don't like that now. I don't want it to start off with do you need a tax receipt? It doesn't feel right to me. So I'm actually going to move this right down to the end. But now to have an address field appearing higher up in the form doesn't make sense. So I'm going to put that after tax receipt. Now if I open that form, I can take a look, see how it looks. Here it is. You'll see that tax receipt address isn't there until I check yes, and now it's there. Now I can type in my address. Submit and done. And obviously this would be embedded on the website, so it wouldn't look quite like this. So I think that gives you enough to start playing around with, start thinking about what's next. And the key really is to think about the processes that are going to go behind Airtable. Airtable is the vehicle to enact that. But what we actually need to do as part of this exercise is work out what are the processes and map them out from start to finish. What do we want to automate and have handled by the team of volunteers? Maybe one day it's actually staff members as well. So I hope you found that useful. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to click the subscribe button, the like button, share this, and yeah, see you again next time.